The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is David Whitaker with GEA, and I would like to welcome you to the webinar, Improving Employee Engagement is a Smart and Affordable Investment. We're fortunate to have Pete Tosh as our speaker. Pete has founded the Focus Group, which is a management consulting firm that assists organizations in sustaining their profitable growth through the management of 4 core disciplines: strategic planning, implementing strategic HR management initiatives, enhancing customer loyalty, maximizing leadership effectiveness. These strategically focused consulting and training services have been provided to manufacturing and service organizations across the U.S., Canada, Europe, and the Middle East. Pete has worked closely with the senior management of organizations such as Exxon, Brinks, EMC, State Farm Insurance, Marriott, NCI, Freddie Mac, and YKK. A couple of issues before we get started. The lines are muted, but you can type in a question and Pete will answer at the end of the webinar. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to Pete.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that introduction, and good afternoon, and thank you guys for participating today. There's a lot to be said about this subject of employee engagement, and a lot of organizations are taking advantage of the benefits from engaged or enhancing employee engagement. I received Gallup's newsletter. I do monthly, and just recently in one of their newsletters, 6 of the 10 articles they had in the newsletter were around this subject of increasing employee engagement. I just received today from another large consulting house a huge result of a large consulting research study that they conducted identifying the benefits of engaged employees. So there's a lot out there. It's well proven, and it's an approach that a lot of large organizations are taking advantage of. And one thing I want to say right at the beginning, I'll talk more about it, but in working with David and GEA, we have to allow as many members and other companies as possible to take advantage of it. We have reduced our survey cost to $17 an employee. So we have gotten it down as low as we think we can get it, and I'll come back and talk about that more. So the opportunity is out there for you. One way of thinking about the benefit of the engaged employees is, I'm sure all of your organizations are working as leanly as you can. You have as few employees as you can, and you're always looking to kind of reduce expenses. One way of increasing profitability, obviously, is reducing expenses, but there's negative side effects associated with that, of course. Or another way you might think about increasing profitability is just increasing employee engagement, because engaged employees perform at a higher level. They're more productive, they provide higher quality, higher customer satisfaction, et cetera, as we'll talk about in just a minute. And let me just take a second and just quickly spell out what we mean by an engaged employee. My favorite definition is what you see at the top of the screen here. It's an employee gives you discretionary effort. They want to be successful in the job. They want the company to be successful, and so they do more than they have to do. And one of the characteristics of an engaged employee that we'll come back and talk about a little bit more is that they are engaged because they feel like their manager, their immediate manager, and the organization want them to succeed. So key aspect of employee engagement then is causing employees to feel like their manager and the organization are working with them. A couple of other ways of looking at employee engagement is it's just a condition or prerequisite for peak performance. Or another way of thinking about it is the level of engagement is the likelihood that an employee will perform to his or her potential. So obviously, the higher the level of employee engagement, the greater likelihood that employees are going to give their all and perform to their peak. You're probably all kind of bought into the topic and the benefits of increasing employee engagement, so it's kind of like preaching to the choir. You might be looking for some ideas that you can utilize with your leadership team kind of cause them to get their attention and cause them to buy in and be willing to put some initiatives behind increasing employee engagement. So I've kind of built the presentation around kind of 10 arguments, as it were, or 10 reasons for enhancing employee engagement. So I'll spend just a minute or two on each one of these. There's a lot more that can be said about each than I'll be able to go through today in our quick webinar, but hopefully in going through these, one or two of them will kind of resonate with you, and you can make a note and go back to your leadership team and kind of make them aware of the benefit of employee engagement because of one or more of these reasons. And on that note, if you're interested in these slides, just my email is on the last slide. You can just send me an email and I'll send the PowerPoint presentation to you. So the first way of looking at a benefit of employee engagement is this model, and it's based off of what was called the service profit chain, came out of Harvard a few years ago. And basically what the model is saying is that organizations make more profit and they grow if they have high levels of customer satisfaction. And you know, customers are satisfied and loyal when they receive quality products and services. But those products and services can only come from one area, and that's your employees. So the idea is that as we engage employees, then they perform at a higher level and are more productive. And a key driver of whether they're engaged or not is their relationship with their immediate supervisor. Again, we'll talk about that more later. Another argument, or actually it's an opportunity associated with employee engagement, is these are Gallup's numbers, and you can see that less than a third of employees in America, this research across many organizations in America, less than a third of the employees they find are engaged. So there's a huge opportunity to benefit from employee engagement, in that most organizations are not performing at their peak because of a lack of employee engagement. About half the employees are just kind of going through the motions, waiting, punching the clock, and then you have the 17%, I refer to them kind of half-jokingly as the terrorists. Those are the folks who don't like their job, don't like the organization, but their mission in life is make sure nobody else likes working there. So we have a huge opportunity, and when you look at this and think about employee engagement, it's not a matter of taking your organization from where it is now to 100%. It's a matter of putting in some initiatives to increase gradually that level of employee engagement. When you do so, you get the resulting benefits. Been extensive research conducted on this topic. All of these large consulting houses have done research studies, and so in my mind, it's proven that it works. And quite frankly, in all the years I've been working in this area, I've never had as much research behind a topic that shows that if we can encourage and train and orient managers to do a few things, employees become more engaged and perform at a higher level. And we know now that there are a few basic needs that we can satisfy to enhance engagement, and we know what managers can do to satisfy those needs, and we know the benefits that come when managers do meet those engagement needs. One piece of research, I'm particularly like Gallup's work. They've been studying this topic for over 20 years. You can see the database, 80,000 managers, million employees, etc. They were trying to determine why some organizations were more successful than others. And of course, there were a number of reasons, but one reason that kept standing out is the fact that these organizations that performed better had better managers, and kind of a no-brainer there, kind of a duh. And they found that if you can imagine a group of unengaged employees versus a group of engaged employees, those engaged employees are going to perform at this higher level as compared to that unengaged. So these engaged employees will drive you 12% higher profitability, 12% increased customer satisfaction, et cetera. When I look at these numbers, I don't know how somebody said, Pete, as a management consultant, wants you to increase our performance to this level. I just wouldn't know how to do it. You might put in some technology that will get you some of this increase, but of course that technology is going to be expensive, and enhancing employee engagement is basically free. I mentioned that a lot of brand name organizations have totally bought into increasing employee engagement. These are just some. Ritz-Carlton, as example, is one of the very few companies that's won the Baldrige Award, our National Quality Award, 2 times. Measuring employee engagement is a key metric in running all of their properties. Campbell's Soup, I don't even have on the list here. Yeah, I do. Campbell's Soup was really on tough times a few years ago, brought in a new CEO, committed to employee engagement, and he said in the literature that that's the way he turned the organization around. Another way you might look at employee engagement as a benefit is all of your organizations have strategy, strategic plan, strategy, business plans, but when you and I help organizations create strategic plans, but those plans by themselves are of no value. They really don't do anything. What we are really striving for is the execution of that strategy, the execution of those plans. And the research shows that the more engaged employees are, the more likely they are to execute that strategy or that plan. So increasing employee engagement is a way of increasing the likelihood that your business plans are going to be executed. Another key factor here is, per Gallup and a lot of the other research houses, is found that a key driver and probably the most important driver of employee engagement is an employee's relationship with his or her immediate supervisor. And Gallup says that tends to be more significant than anything that organizations can do. Now, obviously, pay and benefits and working conditions, those will have some impact on the level of employee engagement. But really, an employee's world and day is either made a positive one or not so positive based off of that relationship that he or she has with their immediate supervisor. And those supervisors and managers have multiple interactions with their direct reports every day. So they're constantly talking to them, interacting. I was running a workshop on this topic just last Friday, and I asked some of the managers during the workshop how many times they had touch points with their employees in a day. And, the numbers were 30, 40, 50 times. So each of those touch points then for a supervisor is that supervisor can look at that interaction as an interruption. That employee is getting in my way of doing what I need to do as a supervisor. Well, a supervisor, obviously, management's accomplishing goals and objectives through others. So the goal here is to cause the supervisors to look at those touch points as opportunities. And so many supervisors will have, let's just say, 30 times a day where they have interactions with the direct report, so they can coach, they can learn from them, they can increase the relationship and increase the level of employee engagement. So engagement is not something that can't be accomplished through supervisors. And these engagement needs that in Gallup has identified 12 basic, and 6 of those are the most correlated with increased performance. They're very practical types of things. If we had a moment, I'd ask you to kind of make a list of what you think those primary or most important workplace engagement needs are. But when I talk to managers about this and show them, as I'm going to show you the top 6 in just a minute, I constantly hear them, people say, well, I knew that. And yes, that makes sense. And that's a no-brainer. But, you know, as someone said, common sense is not always common practice. Research shows that many times we aren't satisfying these basic needs to the level that we think we are. So the 6 primary engagement needs that employees have are these that you just see here. That they understand what they're supposed to do, they have the materials and equipment, that their talents, what they do best is being tapped, is utilized, that managers recognize, praise employees when they do a good job, that the employee feels like they're cared about personally, which you can see here that a manager is really the only person that's in a role to satisfy that need, and that the research shows that the vast majority of the employees want to get better at what they're doing. So that development being encouraged, they're not saying need to go to the training program every week. What they're saying is, I just want to get better at what I'm doing, and I know my immediate supervisor is in a position where he or she can help me with their experience and their know-how and their talents, etc. And you know, we just showed that clarifying expectations is the first basic need, and I've just put up here some ways ways that supervisors have of satisfying that need. So, you know, coaching on using those touch points day in and day out, talking to employees about what the business plan is, what their department's objectives are, explaining to that employee that line of sight, we call it, or the relationship between what they do, excuse me, and what the organization is trying to do. Ritz-Carlton and a lot of other organizations, hospitals, have daily stand-up shift meetings where they just talk about the most important issues that need to be addressed. So these engagement needs are really practical. I like to say that they can be satisfied by any manager who wants to do so. And when we go in and work with organizations and conduct the engagement survey and go over the results with managers for those needs that aren't being satisfied with the manager, we have handouts for each of those needs that just give those managers a number of practical things that they can do. So as I said, these needs are practical, can be met by any manager who's interested in doing so. Disney is bought into increasing employee engagement, so they communicate what they expect of managers, they train the managers in engagement coaching, they conduct engagement surveys, then they look at the results, they set targets, and they hold managers accountable for meeting those goals for improvement. So if you have talked to your leadership team about these 10 or so advantages, then a great effort is to actually conduct an engagement survey, and we say segment the results by supervisor. And the idea here is that if you've got 100 employees in your organization and you have 10 supervisors, each of those supervisors is going to have different levels of engagement with their team of employees. And each of those supervisors is going to be satisfying some needs better than others. So an engagement survey allows you to know where you stand. We strongly recommend members, non-member companies, when we conduct the survey, to let us segment the results so you can then see where each supervisor stands, and then you can go in and meet with and work with each of those supervisors, going over their results, complimenting them on those things that they're doing well, and for where you have the opportunities for improvement, giving them some practical techniques. Another benefit of doing this is it's somewhat like a needs assessment. So it will give you a sense of where those training and development needs are for each of these managers. And obviously, I've mentioned before, GEA, it's one of our most popular services then, is conducting employee engagement surveys with organizations. Our basic process of these steps that you see in front of you. We have a conference call or meeting to tailor the process to the organization. If you're using just the engagement questions, there are just a dozen of them, and we can administer the survey in 15-minute meetings with employees. And of course, we can do it online, or you can self-administer if you prefer those approaches. You get the survey results back in the findings report that will give you the level of employee engagement organization-wide. So the percentage of engagement by each of those questions compared to our database, and then you also get the percentage of agreement for each of those 12 engagement questions per supervisor. So you can go in and work with them individually, as I mentioned before. And then once you've gone over the findings report that we've submitted, then we meet with you or have a conference call. We go over it, we answer questions, we talk about what the findings are, and we help you and suggest practical follow-up initiatives. So it's a pretty straightforward process. It can be administered quickly. It tends to drive higher performance. We see here, we're saying that we just feel like organizations that aren't working to increase employee engagement are leaving money on the table. And all these reasons we just kind of talked about, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have worked hard to try to get that cost down as low as possible to allow as many organizations as have an interest to take advantage of the engagement survey. And so the pricing is $17 an employee. And if you go out in the marketplace and compare that to other organizations, this will compare extremely favorably. We do have a caveat of, because of our cost of IT cost, we have kind of set a minimum of 75 employees, but if for organizations that have fewer than that, we can make arrangements and conduct your survey with another organization and have it administered. So hopefully today, I've moved through a lot of material really quickly, but hopefully through some of the things we said today, maybe some of those 10 benefits of an increasing employee engagement, maybe a couple of those hopefully have rung true with each of you, and you could take it back to your leadership team and see if they don't want to take advantage of the increased performance from employees by enhancing that level of employee engagement. So, gone through it quickly. Hopefully we've got a couple of questions, David. Any that were submitted that I can try to answer in a short period of time that we have before we close.
Sure. Okay, you have been talking, and this is Linda's question. You have been talking about larger. I'm sorry, about larger size companies. Is there a minimum size organization that benefits by having an employee engagement survey?
The short answer is no. I mean, increasing employee engagement benefits any organization, whether they have a handful or thousands. The survey, as I mentioned, we have that cap of minimum of 75, but organizations who have fewer employees than that, we can combine them in the survey. I'm reminded, Linda, about a few years ago, I was working with a physician, and he looked at me in his office when we got started. He said, "Pete, I know you're used to working with larger organizations." He said, "I've got 6 employees here, and 6 equals 100% for me." I'll never forget that. So it really doesn't matter. The size, every organization can benefit.
And Pete, you say we could. You can combine smaller groups to come up with the 75.
Absolutely, and we have a couple projects right now that we're working to do that. So
okay,
we can make that happen.
Okay, we do have some more questions. Can you provide references of organizations who have used the survey?
We'd be glad to. I can just run off some of the names: Bard, Bridgestone, Paycor, Active Minerals, and then there are others, and some of them and some other organizations. We've run the survey for multiple years, so they're all pleased. So we'd be very happy to give you contact information, and you can check references and get perceptions from companies that have used the survey.
Okay. Let's see. Can you share any examples of how organizations have benefited from the survey?
One that, there are several, but one that's at top of mind is this large company, actually international. VP of HR contacted me, and he said they're a very metrics-driven organization, and he said, I know employee performance has an impact on everything else we measure: productivity, quality, delivery time, etc. And he said, I want a metric that I can gauge how well the employees are contributing to the performance within the organization. So we administered the survey, just as we talked about. We gave them findings, results. We went over the results with them and helped them implement a series of action steps. Went back and conducted the survey the second year, 12 months later, and the level of employee engagement from first year to second year increased by 10%. So you could roll that out, look at that, compare that to the research, and you'd show tremendous dollar increase benefits to organizations.
Can the survey be tailored to my company's needs?
Absolutely. We can administer it in small groups. We can administer it electronically, or organizations will help them administer it themselves. We tailor it with that segmentation as we're talking about. So we work with you, and you tell us how you want the results segmented, and we can give it to you organization-wide, by department, by shift, by supervisor, of course. And even the questionnaire. We've got 12 engagement questions, but sometimes organizations want to add questions, add closed-end. Maybe they want to add open-ended questions. Sometimes organizations want us to administer a survey, and at the end of the survey meeting, then take up the surveys and kind of run focus groups. And they will have 3-4 key questions that they want us to ask the groups of employees. in a focus group setting, we jot down on flip charts their responses, and we put that in the report as well. So definitely can be tailored lots of ways.
And one more. Are any of the survey questions aimed at soliciting feedback about the entire organization, not just a participant's immediate supervisor? Because here's another part of the question: is the survey anonymous?
The survey definitely is anonymous. Yes, right, exactly. So that's a key part. Go ahead, David.
How is confidentiality preserved?
Okay. We, for example, our standard administration approach is in employee meetings, as I mentioned. We tell the employees not to sign the survey. All they do is they designate their segment. We make sure the segments are large enough that we maintain confidentiality. We take up the survey themselves. We don't know who said what, and only we and our IT people see those surveys. So yeah, it's totally anonymous. And there was a first part of that question, David.
Right. Yeah. Let me read that to you. Let me read that again. Are any of the survey questions aimed at soliciting feedback about the entire organization, not just a participant's immediate supervisor?
Okay. Two ways of answering that. One is with the engagement questions. The dozen core engagement questions are asking for perception of the employee's relationship with his or her supervisor. So, but when we combined the responses from all the employees in the organization, then that's telling you organization-wide how well those needs are being met. So if we take that first question about clarity of expectations, if there's a low percentage of agreement there, then you can know organization-wide that you're not communicating to employees what you expect them to do. So that's one way of looking at it. And then, of course, we can always add questions and tailor the survey to the organization. So if there are particular things that an organization wants to know about, then we can help them. We've got a battery of questions. We can help the organization design some questions to probe whatever they want to find. And they can be in closed-ended or open-ended questions or in the focus group setting.
Okay, great. You want to go ahead and move to the last slide that has your email address on it?
Yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate you remembering that. So it's pete.tosh at, the name of my company is thefocusgroup.biz. We'll be glad, if you just shoot me an email, I'll be glad to send you the PowerPoint. If you have other questions, excuse me, put those in an email or give me a call. We'd be glad to talk to you about those and try to answer your questions. And we appreciate you struggling with my throat today. We appreciate you participating. Thank you very much for those good questions. And we hope that you and your leadership team will see some benefits and take an approach to increase the level of employee engagement within your organization.
Okay, thank you, Pete. One last opportunity to ask questions. I don't see any. We've answered a couple of questions that have come up. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, I see. I do have one more quick question here.
Good. I like those questions.
Let's see. Okay. Last slide did not come through, so we're not seeing the last slide.
Okay, I can. All right, I'll give you the email address and in my phone number. It's Pete, P-E-T-E .Tosh, T-O-S-H at, and the name of my company is thefocusgroup.biz, B-I-Z. Pete.Tosh at thefocusgroup.biz. group.biz. Phone number is 478-746-6891.
And if anybody has any questions, I'm sorry, Pete, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you can't reach me, then you've got David's contact.
Okay, so one last chance for questions. We'll be closing out. Thank you, Pete. Great job as usual. We do appreciate everyone who participated. Like Pete said, give us a call, send us an email. We'll be glad to respond to you as quickly as possible. Hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thanks, David.